So for me, the issue is irrelevant as to whether the regime is driven by secular ideologies or religious ideologies. If they're driven by ideologies that trample on human rights, if they try to suppress plurality, if they prevent people from being able to grow in their own ideals and to flourish with their own human rights, then they should be resisted, which is why the IRGC certainly should be, as Bob Blackman and everybody else has said during these proceedings, be prescribed in the UK. As Lord Carlisle has said, it even comes down to execution where it suits the regime. Ever since the theocracy usurped power in 1979 by stealing the popular democratic revolution, the judiciary has been used as a tool of oppression, and the paramilitary IRGC has been a used tool of terror, eliminating pro-democracy forces and dissenting voices, both at home and abroad. And I count in that number colleagues like myself who have been now sanctioned by the Iranian regime for daring to speak out and holding meetings of this kind. This is a crude attempt to try and silence the voice of democracy and parliamentarians. The reality, of course, is that the regime has closed all venues of opposition through parliamentary and political activity. What it does at home, it tries to do abroad as well. The people of Iran are forced to live under religious tyranny and oppression. The regime's laws restrict Iranian people's fundamental rights and freedoms, and they're left with no other recourse but to rebel through popular uprising to realize their democratic aspirations, to enjoy their fundamental rights and their freedoms. And in this regard, as Lady Alton has said, we must applaud the brave women of Iran and the resistance units of the democratic opposition referred to by Madam Rajadi earlier on, for challenging the regime's repressive laws and defying its oppression to expand the uprising and anti-regime activities and protests. I would simply end by referring to the 10-point plan. If it was all about saying no, if it was all about the denunciation of the regime, that would be not good enough. But the NCRI has been to the fore in spelling out what it would do if it had the opportunity to govern freely and fairly in Iran. And I would commend that to anybody. And unfortunately, there are people who say, well, would the NCRI be any different? Of course, the answer is it would be the total opposite of everything that has gone before. And we've got to spell that out and make sure that our colleagues in Parliament, finally, our government should lead allies at the United Nations to demand Iran's United Nations Special Rapporteur, Javad Rahman, and the UN fact-finding mission a chance to visit the Iranian prisons and meet with political prisoners and detained protesters, as the NCRI has called for again and again. And I urge our government to set an example globally by cutting diplomatic relations with a regime that continues to carry out the kind of obscenities that we have seen over this last year until it ends executions, releases all political prisoners, releases detained protesters and dual citizens, and verifiably scraps the discriminatory and repressive laws against women and the Iranian people. Thank you for inviting me to speak.